Islam is the second largest religion after Christianity, with about 1.8 billion Muslims worldwide. Islam began in the 7th century AD, making it the youngest of the major world religions. Like Judaism, Islam looks back to Abraham for its origins, but through Ishmael rather than Isaac. Abraham had 2 sons, and they choose Ishmael instead of Isaac to look back to. The word Islam means submission to the will of God. Its followers are called Muslims, and Muslims worship one all-knowing God, who in Arabic is known as Allah. They believe that nothing can happen without Allah's permission, but humans have free will. Yet all are predestined by Allah. Islam teaches that Allah's word was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad through the angel Gabriel. They respect some of the same prophets as Jews and Christians, including Abraham, Moses, and Noah. And just the mention of the angel Gabriel shows a connection also with Old and New Testament. Jesus, for Muslims, was a prophet and the Messiah, but he was not, nor did he ever claim to be the Son of God, God himself, or any part of a divine trinity. In his mission as a prophet, Jesus did not bring a new or different religion, according to Islam, but rather, like all prophets, he called the people to Islam, which simply means submission to the will of God. So Muslims do not believe Jesus was killed on the cross. He was saved from crucifixion by divine intervention and then raised up to heaven alive by God. Now that shows a big distinction, a difference between Islam and the Christian faith. The Quran is the major holy text of Islam. Followers worship Allah by praying and reciting the Quran. They believe there will be a day of judgment and a life after death. One central idea in Islam is jihad, which means struggle. Now, Muslims believe jihad refers to internal and external efforts to defend their faith. This can include a military jihad if a just war is needed, and dying during a jihad leads directly to paradise. Muslims have 5 basic pillars of their faith, and they consider to be absolutely essential. First of all, they believe they have to declare one's faith in God and belief in Muhammad. God and Muhammad together. Secondly, to pray 5 times a day, at dawn, at noon, in the afternoon, sunset, and then again in the evening. To give to those who are in need. The 4th is to fast during Ramadan, which is the holiest month of the year. And finally, if possible, to make a pilgrimage to Mecca at least once during a person's lifetime. But the person has to be able to do that. Now Muhammad, if we look at the history, was born in Mecca in Saudi Arabia in 570. And according to Islam, he was the final prophet sent by God to reveal the faith to mankind. And according to Islamic texts and tradition, the angel Gabriel visited Muhammad in 610 while he was meditating in a cave and ordered him to recite the words of Allah. Muslims believe that Muhammad continued to receive revelations from Allah through the rest of his life. In 622, Muhammad traveled from Mecca to Medina with his supporters, and this journey became known as the Hijrah, and marks the beginning of the Islamic calendar. Some 7 years later, Muhammad and his followers returned to Mecca, and they conquered that region. He continued to preach until his death in 632. Most Muslims believe that Muhammad's scribes wrote down his words, which became the Quran. That was necessary because Muhammad himself was never taught to read or to write. So the book is written with Allah speaking through Gabriel to Muhammad. It contains 114 chapters, which are called surahs. Then there's the hadith, which means news or story. That's a record of the traditions or sayings of Muhammad, revered, received as a major source of religious law and moral guidance. The hadith is second only to the authority of the Quran. Now, after Muhammad's death, a series of leaders known as caliphs became his successors. This system of leadership, which was run by a Muslim ruler, became known as a caliphate. During the reign of the first four caliphs, Arab Muslims conquered large regions in the Middle East, including Syria, Palestine, Iran, and Iraq, and also spread throughout areas in Europe, Africa, and Asia. The caliphate system lasted for centuries, eventually evolved into the Ottoman Empire, which controlled large regions in the Middle East from about 1517 until 1917, when World War I ended the Ottoman reign. When Muhammad died, there was a debate over who should replace him as leader. This led to a schism in Islam, and two major sects emerged, the Sunnis and the Shiites. Perhaps you're familiar hearing these words in our day. Sunnis make up nearly 90% of Muslims worldwide. They accept that the first four caliphs were the true successors to Muhammad. Shiite Muslims believe that only the fourth caliph and his descendants are the real successors to Muhammad. They deny the legitimacy of the first three caliphs. So today, Shiite Muslims have a considerable presence in Iran, Iraq, and Syria. Those are the two major groups, but there are some sects even within these two groups. The Wahhabi is a Sunni sect made up of members of the Tamim tribe in Saudi Arabia. That was founded in the 18th century. They are extremely strict observers of Islam. Their interpretation is a stricter one than the traditional Islam. The Alawite sect is a Shiite form of Islam, and that's prevalent in Syria. Followers hold similar beliefs about the fourth caliph, but also observe some Christian and Zoroastrian holidays. So there's a little bit of intermixing with that one. Now, the Nation of Islam is kind of different. It's a mostly African-American Sunni sect that was founded in the 1930s in Detroit, Michigan, which might be a surprise to many people. We have Sufism, which is considered to be the mystical branch of Islam, and its followers are treated as heretics, though, by traditional Muslims. Islam's legal system is known as Sharia law. It's a code of conduct that directs Muslims on how they should live in nearly every aspect of their lives. Sharia law requires men and women to dress modestly and also outlines marriage guidelines and other moral principles for Muslims. Now, Sharia can be known for its harsh punishments. For example, the punishment for theft is amputating a person's hand. Adultery can carry the penalty of death by stoning. Muhammad is credited with building the first mosque in the courtyard of his house in Medina. So mosques today follow some of the same principles that he established back in the year 622. Muslim prayer is often conducted in a mosque's large open space or outdoor courtyard. A mihrab is a decorative feature or niche in the mosque that indicates the direction to Mecca and therefore the direction to face during prayer. Men and women pray separately. Muslims may visit a mosque 5 times a day for each of the prayer sessions. Now, Islam has strained relations with Israel. Many Islamic nations seek to destroy the Jewish state. And then there were the attacks on America on September 11th, 2001 that heightened concern over the more radical Islamic believers. Moderate Muslims want to integrate as much as possible into Western societies while maintaining their faith, whereas the more radicalized Islamists seek to overturn what they deem to be infidel cultures and religions. Since both Islam and Christianity claim to be the final word from God, the question is whether the two faiths can see eye to eye on some matters. As we now turn to the history and practice of Christianity in our next session, that will be one of the questions to keep in mind.